So, Yaw, tell me, how did you become part of Skyy from day one?
I was managing the campus radio from Katanga, USC at that time, or KN USC, as you want to say. And was another brother was there on campus. And so one day he just said, Charlie, I think I can get something for you. I think I want to pull you to my brother's station. Your rating is very high. Mind you, that time we hadn't got a lot of private stations around, so a few of us were on air. So this guy said, no, I won't let you go anywhere. I've spoken to my brother about you and the way I described you, just doesn't want to go anywhere. So right after school, way long ago, June 1998, I think, right after presenting my last paper, the following week I was at Skyy. I actually got in, I think I got in a month earlier to come and do some kind of a trial.
Mm-hmm.
And so the moment I came, I got in there in the evening, and then Willie said, you know what, I'm going to put you on, you do Christian radio. I said, right? I said, yes. So, okay, I want to put you on air, so 4 o'clock be here, a.m., actually 4 a.m. So thank God I was. I believe for the fact that I have done it over the past like 3 years and actually also managed programs, I believe that the pressure wasn't, the tension wasn't too much. The musical program itself was good, and right after that, he said, oh, I want to put you on news, try if you can do news. And I've never done news. I said, but, you know, speaking extempo is not the same as reading news. So he put me on. I remember it was Petit Pleasure on the show, and they asked me to do the stuff that you guys, Phillip and the Rama, you do best. And there was somebody who has done extempo radio for like how many years, now being put on the spot to reach. It was a big flop, but of course, I believe it identified where my strengths are, where my weaknesses are. And so right there, the deal was signed right after school getting. So June, I completed 1998. Then Skyy had been about, I think, 10 months or so. And then right there I was. So I got in Skyy. That is how it happened. Right after school, trying to find something around, not to be idle, and also to actually find something for my passion, because I'd done radio for 3 years and I had absolutely loved it. You know, apart from the mysterious status it gives you, because everybody knows you. I mean, campus, everybody knows you, your name, but people don't know you. And that makes it interesting. And then the same as well. So I wanted to put my passion into making some business. The moment I got in, Willie said, oh, I learned you were managing your station. I said, yes. Said, okay, so then you're going to have to be the program manager. That position is vacant now. But just, you know, be here to help us organize the on-air sort of the programs that is outside the news.
Mm-hmm.
So then Willie said, okay, so I'm my first programs manager. And the experience that I had on campus is just what I brought on. Of course, when I got in, I realized that it was different. You know, campus, we are the same. We are all the same. We are classmates. And so even though you are the manager, people tell you off. They can tell you off. They can tell you their mind. They tell you off. I mean,
yeah,
you know, stuff like that. But I realized that this is much more corporate. I was used to that kind of telling off thing, but I realized this is a corporate organization and people want to go by the hierarchy. So I found the programs manager thing at Skyy a bit more under control than what I used to have on campus. So it was great as well. The first thing I saw, I would say, is the down-to-earth management style that Willie and the team, Big Bro, asked for him and Sagwa. The very down-to-earth kind of management. It was very attractive to me. Naturally, you know, I believe that, and then for all of us, I saw there, I believe that we are all very ordinary-minded, down-to-earth guys, you know. Upon all the celebrity status some of us got, especially someone like Ruth I and people like Mabi Fua, and you know, I wasn't so much a celebrity. I mean, I wasn't, you know, but those guys were really up there. And even that very James Caesar, you know, very humble guys. So we got on, young guys as a family. The second thing I saw was that Skyy is a family. I mean, I came from Kumasi at that time. I believe I had a lot of Jack in my speech. So I called everybody Jack to speak that way. Skyy adopted Jack for my name, and we eventually had a variant, Jackie, who has come to stay, and for which even some non-Skyy people who were close to us even called me by that name, Jackie, because I come from Kumasi. And then I believe that also when it comes to tea, advertising and stuff, then my Kumasi thing came in as well. It was a good setting that we had. We had, of course, the very being like-minded and driving towards the goal. I believe that we meshed very well. There were very little skirmishes between staff. That is one thing we saw. There were the different departments. Later, the likes of Ato Pamela would join, and all that. And then once I got in and I settled a little bit, I remember it was KGA who was doing the sport. One day KGA couldn't turn up. I had finished my Saturday morning. Willie says, "Boss, I don't have anybody to stay in." I said, "Me, I don't even follow Premier League. The last time I did anything was Kumasi and that was in my sixth form days. I haven't followed Premier League ever since." Willie said, "You have to try first." So I sat in, I did the sports, and that also became history. Now I had to add on sports. Thankfully, there were the likes of Kujo Frimpong who would spur us on, because honestly, I felt very intimidated by Kujo Frimpong's commentary. He was in a class of his own. Later, Eloy joined, and we got a very nice sports team. It was all English at that time, and then later Kuntu joined the sports department. So it was us. Isel also came to join, but that was in the latter stages where I checked out. So that was it. I remember my time with Christian Radio. It was me and Chen Akin. We would do our dawn broadcast, and then we had the very strong, person in the form of Shen. Mr. Shen, if you remember him, he would do what we call Glory Action Time. On the Christian Radio, we had a good network with the churches, good rapport with pastors, and we're running that side of stuff very well. And that brought us a lot more out, because then we had to attend Christian programs and all that. So Christian Radio's influence in Takrady became very strong. I remember one other thing, which is the news review, which Phillip Nyakpo did. I mean, I remember it was somebody who did it before Phillip Nyakpo stepped in. And when Phillip Nyakpo stepped in, it was a different ballgame together. The analysis that eventually became one of the top-notch programs for Skyy Power. And of course, our own opinion, who would do his Obasima with Osofo and Pastor Kwame Jekum. And then I remember this other elderly lady who was also there. I've forgotten the name. But Obasima had become one of the top-notch programs as well. So you could, programming-wise, if you look at Skyy, then Skyy appealed to almost the whole of the Takrady. And that was a mystery, because you don't find a radio station that could cut across the various listening segments like that. But Skyy had it. Adults loved it. Children loved it. The formal sector people loved it. Informal sector people loved it. And of course, now comes in Pakofi Abronoma, who now raises down the informal sector and the whole of Takrady at that time. At a point, I think he was the number one on the celebrity status chart, if I can say that. I mean, with Abronoma in our car, I remember GMC's car, we won't buy fuel. When we go to restaurants with Abronoma, it's free food. Ruth I also had that kind of aura around his celebrity status. So it was a very exciting place to live. Here are people who are celebrities, and the whole of Takrady who hail them. At that time, Skyy had about 95 to 98% listenership, because it was only Skyy and Station. Now the proliferation of radio stations is up, and so I know Skyy is still the number one, second Takrady, but listenership is a bit more sort of spread out now. So here are guys who are adequate celebrities, and yet when we meet, it's very ordinary people, young guys trying to aspire to do things in life, who have dreams, some to travel abroad, some to continue their education, some to marry at that time. I remember it was only Auntie McCanson who had a family at that time, if I remember.
Mm-hmm. And then not long after she joined us, she had a baby as well. Yes. We called the baby the first Skylet. Mamiesi McHanson had a baby shortly after she joined. Yeah.
Exactly. So she was there. But of course, my somebody worth remembering in this chat is Uncle Opia. He always came after me, and we always had a time to have some kind of a short 15-minute chat because he comes in very early. He comes to sit by me, and interestingly, when I was in primary school, I attended a school in St. Louis called Gleason Primary School at that time. Opia used to work with GBC on a fracture pain program. One time, Opia visited the primary school there in St. Louis. I played a certain role there. And in one of our morning sessions when we were speaking, and I told Opia remembered me and what I did. That to me was striking because he was an older man, and this thing has happened. Then I finished university, but this thing has happened when I was in primary school. And Opia could remember the part that I played with the. And so that bonded us more. That bonded us a lot more. And I picked a lot of, those people, these people, they were well trained. And so they had a lot of the radio ethics and all that. And Opia would push some of them to me. And we became very, very good friends until the time of my departure. I spent 3 years in Takoradi. That was my first time I lived in Takoradi. Skyy brought me there. By the time I had left Takoradi, I had made so many friends that now I consider Takoradi probably the best place I've lived, even more than Kumasi and Serio, where I grew up. Okay, altogether almost about 25, 26 years. The 3 years I spent in Takoradi was very remarkable. It was very, as it were, very, very significant. And I actually nearly got a wife there, but that didn't happen. So that is my stay in Takoradi. So in September 2001, I had left to go and continue my education, and that is where I sort of went full time into financial planning, and now I'm being stopped in pensions. But I haven't left the media. As I speak to you now, I have a full time content production media business. And what we do is we do a lot of public education in financial literacy. We break business principles down. So anytime I have a website, Ghana Talks Business, and there's a lot more of content creation. I do documentaries, TV documentaries. I do radio documentaries, and it's all from my work, for media and what I did at Skyy. Even though I am not on mainstream radio, my passion for media business is strong. So basically, Skyy was an experience. 3 years, down to earth management, friendships. Skyy's friendships has grown. I mean, all of us have been together. Bob G, Joino Singh, them I knew back from school anyway, but like so, Kwete Kweno, Eloy, we call each other anytime we need help or we need to touch base with different people. Unfortunately, our sister, Issy, we used to call her Issy Jan, is going to be with the Lord about 6 years ago, after battling a bit with
cancer.
But she
and
then Uncle Opia,
so was Opia and Kwesi Mold.
Uncle Mold as well is going to be with the Lord. Uncle Mold, we would have wished that he lived with us more, but I do believe that he had advanced a bit in years and his body couldn't take what he has to go through. So I mean, these three beautiful souls, we lost them. They've gone to be with the Lord, and we are the ones that are here. But our friendships still continue. Anytime I see James Caesar still does what he does on Skyy. And anytime I'm in Takoradi, at least we will have a chat. Bob G, anytime we have a chat. Our friendships have grown. Me and Yuki, we still talk and talk very well. What? I mean, the friendships are great. I'll call him consultations here and there. And the guys, they were cracks. They all knew what we were about. And each one of us, I believe, has been able to do something for themselves. So, Philip, in short, I don't know if I said anything, sensible, but that is all about my experience with Skyy Power FM.
I am very impressed, Yaw. You're very well spoken, articulate, and your memory is beautiful. Really, really, really nice. and I speak as if I don't know you, but I do. But when we've had many intervening years of no real communication, partly because I'm so far away, it's just nice to hear that voice again, especially from the perspective of reflection. Reflection long after the fact. Reflection after you've become even more mature. Because, hey, I have to tell you, at Skyy those days, I think you were probably more of the mature guy. We were one of them, a few. We had just a few, I mean, even the matured guys were a little bit crazy, We were all a bunch of crazy people, But I always felt like you were a person who was quite level-headed, and I'm not sure if some of us contributed to you becoming a bit more flexible in being jovial and things like that. But I clearly remember you used to say Jack a lot. Like, you called everyone Jack, and you're right. Yeah. It's stuck with us. It became a mini culture, and we will see each other and go like, hey, Jackie, Jackie. Yeah. But just, but I'm truly impressed the way there is nothing you've said that is unfamiliar to me. It is just so refreshing to hear after so many years. And like I said, from the perspective of matured reflection, So just tracking back just a little bit. So at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, where you did have an experience in radio, it was a campus radio. Is that right?
Yes, it was.
And what was the name?
It was Contato Radio. Yes, it's CONTTATO. The person who started it, I decided to take some Italian name or whatever for it. So it was Contato. And our frequency was the only frequency with double the gate at the back. So it was 94.35. I remember very well.
94.35.
Yes. And yes, and because it was the student station, we had about 60 presenters on. Because somebody would do like 2 hours a week, somebody would do like an hour a week, somebody would do, so we were quite a number. So I actually managed a larger presenting body on campus than I did on Skyy.
Mm-hmm. So tell me,
and these were those who are made, those who choose not to tell you or not to tell you whether they are coming to play or not.
Yeah. Do you know, it's funny how you say it's the only radio station with 2 digits after the first 2 numbers, so 94.35. For all the years I've been in radio, I've never come across one with 2 digits after the dot. So that's an interesting little revelation. Now, you said you got in touch, or you were friends or knew Wilson Arthur's brother.
Yes, on campus.
Who is that?
Campus, we all have crazy names, but we used to call him Farrakhan, Louis Farrakhan.
Right.
I hear he's a medical officer now. Yes. And then I was called Socrates. A lot of people didn't actually know my real name until I got to Takrade, and then some of my mates just heard my voice and they said, I think it's Socrates' voice. And then they would come in. We have time. Oh, okay. So it was after school that people even got to know my real name.
How did you get called Socrates?
Well, okay. Well, this is a long story back from my secondary school days, where there was a guy in class called Aristotle. Now, I started really coming up strongly in math from Form 3. And from Form 3, I would do like 98%. And I did that through to A-level. So one of the first tests that actually took me up to that level, I think I got 96 over 100. And then this guy who calls himself Aristotle went to take my test paper and wanted to be sure whether really, because they had been the guys on top of all this while. And here comes this unassuming, calm, quiet, shy guy who from nowhere gets on top. So he took the paper, did everything. I was looking for my paper, I couldn't find it. Later he came and said, you know what? You beat me to it. If I'm Aristotle, then you are Socrates. And that is how the name came.
Right. Well, look, that's a nice background to know.
I remember fighting it very, very hardly that you shouldn't give me that name, whatever. I fought, but the guy was very loud. So Socrates just came to say.
Right. That's an interesting background to know because it fits into what I knew you to be. You are fundamentally, as I knew you, a fairly reflective person. You were very quite calculating and cautious and reasonably fair as well, but only occasionally causing a little bit of trouble. You know, maybe the troublesome side of you is probably something you got from many of the other guys we all worked with, you know, so that it all became a common pot of craziness. You know?
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes I have to be very strong on certain issues.
Yeah. So
I remember. Yeah.
About the so-called Louis Farrakhan. I mean, Wilson, as our boss, we got to know him very well and got to know his family, his wife and children very well. And then his older brother, Kennedy Arthur, also very well. But interestingly, I wasn't aware that he had a brother who went to KNUST.
Oh, he used to be there. He used to come there. He didn't come there too often because then he was in London. He was in UK. When we finished school, he left. So once a while, he would come. But he didn't come there too often. Honestly, he didn't come to. Even when I was there, I think he came there like twice. Spent some 2 days, and left. So if you see him, he resembles Big Bro a lot more.
Right.
But if you see him, you know he's their brother.
Right. So tell me, when you were exactly what were you doing for Contactful Radio? Were you a studio manager or the programs manager?
I was a studio manager. I was sort of the general manager. Managing presenters, the online content. I mean, we had about 70%, in fact, about 80% musical focus because that's what we love to do. Mm-hmm. We had a few talk shows. So basically, I was managing everything. I was managing human beings and managing machines. And of course, transmission. If you had any problem, you have to sit with me. And the radio belonged to the hall, to the university hall called Katanga Hall. The university hall or Katanga Hall owned that station. So I had to report to the hall president if there are any issues or, if we need money to fund and things like that. We're not doing a lot of advertising. So the hall funded it when we needed. And so we just have to make sure that we're looking after the hall's assets very well. And the hall prided itself a lot because, sometimes it could become a mouthpiece of the hall. When I became the studio manager, I tried to manage that a little bit so it would please everybody. It will satisfy the needs of everybody, not just hall. Because not everybody who likes what goes on in Katanga Hall. Okay, so I tried to manage it a bit to make it a lot more public friendly and all that by the kind of presenters. So I remember I brought in one or two presenters from town to come and do 3 programs. They caught on like fire. That was when we should have had the mind to see that Peace FM, a model like Peace FM would work. And so sometimes when I look back, I'm like, I had this model all along, and I didn't take advantage of it. I remember there's a guy, he's so rest in peace, because it was a campus station, so it was all English. But then this guy comes from a neighboring village called Aibiase. And it comes to say things like, and you play those music, and the thing caught on campus like wildfire. So then we brought 1 or 2 guys from outside as well who would bring in the extra flavor. So basically, that's how I managed that student shift to become a bit of a public shift.
But ultimately,
everything about the station, basically.
Yeah, but ultimately, it remained a typical a campus student radio station, not commercial in any way.
Yes, typical campus, yeah.
So when you were a studio manager there, did you get to meet another young man then called Robert Gardner?
Yes, I got on, Robert Gardner and Joe Innocent. Well, I actually, if I can say, I recruited Joe Innocent. I remember Joe Innocent came. He said, let me digress a little bit. I'll come to Bob Gardner later.
Mm-hmm.
Ulysses came and said, I want to be a radio presenter. I spoke to him. Then he was in first year. And, I didn't feel, he looked very unassuming. And that was a very wrong judgment on my part. I thought this guy, and, we had a certain schedule. When you come, you begin shadowing somebody who plays music. So you can be comfortable with the machines. Then after a while, after about a month or so, then you begin to now make some introductory comments on radio until you get used to the microphone, and then now you blurt out. So I said to this guy, look, he was pestering my life that he wanted to get on radio. I said, but you just came in today. Tomorrow you can't be on air. The guy was pestering my life, but he pestered me for like 2 weeks. He pestered my life. Even though I said I won't get him on air, he would just come and sit there while people are playing. And, some people weren't very comfortable because sometimes they themselves, they are struggling. Now, one afternoon, I was sleeping. The DJ that was supposed to have come at the time didn't come. So in my sleep, I just heard somebody talking. And I said, hang on, I don't know this voice. Because I knew all the 70 or so voices on the radio. And I said, hang on, I don't know this voice. But it sounded so good. I rushed from my room, go just to the studio, and there I see Jonathan. So I'm like, I told you not to come on air, didn't I? Yeah, he said, yes, but when I came, there was nobody there. So you just have played music and not to talk. But inside me, I had been put to shame. And I didn't just want to admit that. And Jonathan rose to become one of our most cherished, reputable, great crowd-pulling guys on the radio. He played, Jonathan, his selection of songs, his voice, his control. He did better in the first month being on radio than people who have been on there for like 3 years. Bob Gardner used to come with a friend to come and play. Bob Gardner, he didn't have any problem with his speech at all. So when his guy left, his friend completed school and left. His friend was my mate, but he did a 3-year course, so he left and straight away Bob Gardner took over. And Bob Gardner at that time impressed me with his very, very anglicized English. Some of us speak English, but ours is more Commerciano, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm glad you said it yourself, so no one can accuse me of being the one who introduced the Jack.
I'll tell you something funny later. Yeah. And then Bob Gardner just got on and started playing in schools. And so when I got on Skyy, and at that time, Kushi Fletcher has left, Kwete did a bit of the morning show and also left for school. Willie wanted me to do morning show. I said, no, that's not my cut. I'm not cut to do that. So then we brought on Bob Gardner. So yes, we knew each other way then. Back to the Commerciano thing. I remember I was saying one day we were all in the reception. All of us were there. And we were talking about this Commerciano thing. There are one or two words that I struggle with. That one, everybody knows. Fakufi knows, Eloy knows. And then I said, apart from these two words, there's nothing about my English that suggests that I'm from Kumasi. And I was bragging, and Sister just looked at me. They said, you know what? You say 100 when you actually 100.
100.
100. When you are calling 100, you call it 100. And then straight away, I thought this woman had shocked me. I've never realized that I say 100. And I said, by 100, what do we say? He said, everybody passes the laughter. I said, by 100. And I remember there were one or two, Skyy always had one or two non-Skyy workers who were there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe his friends and other people's friends. Yeah, normally they were there. And Philip, I had a lot of ladies around me, you remember?
Oh, you were a bit of a ladies person. Yeah.
And so some of them were, you have never corrected me. You're shooting me like that. I say 100. And that really caught me out, And Paku will always laugh at me openly on air. That he throws a challenge to me to come and say the word proliferation. Proliferation. Okay, yeah, come and say proliferation. And
you can't say proliferation. Do you know what? I think I probably remember.
And I will come and say, come on air and say I cannot sing. So you should go on with this program. What you wanted, I've thrown it out.
Do you know what? I am pretty sure that one time we actually played you I don't know if we actually told you, but we were writing a script for sports or something like that you were going to read, and we found a way to put in the word proliferation, knowing that you were going to struggle with it. So,
you are mischievous guys. You are telling me today.
We put in the word. Sure enough, you murdered it. You couldn't say proliferation.
Guys are mischievous. Is this how you are telling me?
No, I really remember because what it was you guys, some of you guys, including you try to make a presence, appear in the newsroom exactly when we don't want anybody at all in the newsroom. And you guys were just so annoying. And we didn't have enough time to devise ways to kind of get back at you always. So the first thing we refer to is instant justice, to say, now get out of here now. But on this occasion, as we were writing, I clearly, distinctly remember we said, no, we have to make sure we put this, and I think we must have given you the script with very little time as well, so you couldn't go and hide somewhere and practice it over and over. Oh man, and you messed it up.
But I messed it up. Oh. That's a mischievous. And we never really practiced through our script. We
We didn't practice much because there was always not enough time.
It used to be handwritten.
Yeah.
Yes. We used to be handwritten and all that.
Yeah, because obviously the sports area was part of the newsroom, but then you were also guys who could do a lot of the things, because there's no way you'd be talking to me about sports. Not much. I wasn't overly interested. Mr. Mo doesn't even think it's fit to be called news.
That's right.
Yes. And it's interesting to hear about Bob Gardner and Joe Innocent. And particularly with Joe Innocent. Now, I have already spoken to Bob Gardner, this extensive interaction, and he did say, he gave you full credit. He said you were mainly the reason why he was able to get to Skyy. Basically, you held his hand, and make sure he got employed at Skyy. And that is when he revealed that, yes, you were the student manager at the Contato radio station back on campus in Kumasi. But I hadn't known about Joe Innocent at all.
Wow, okay.
The only memory I have, the solid memory I have of Joe Innocent is he came exactly how you described him. Very unassuming. You wouldn't think. In fact, he actually looked like he had lost his way when he came. It was like he just dropped. He just dropped a Skyy.
And always wore a shirt that was 3 times his size.
Yes. In fact, all right, let me describe him. And I know, because this is being recorded, one day we hear it. So, Joe, I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but the truth is, or opinion or anything, and I couldn't care about how he feels about it. But boy, the guy looked like a refugee. And I thought, I am famous for not having a good fashion sense at all. But man, if I stand beside Joe, I was shiny. But then the guy gets on radio, and man, he's got the voice, and his musical taste is second to none. Well, I would say maybe Wilson beats him. Wilson is something else. But the two of them were a formidable team in terms of musical taste. Yeah. So tell me, I know you've made bits of references here and there as you kept going along, but describe the kind of place Skyy was to work in terms, especially in regards to the different characters that were there, the people.
I'd managed guys who were my mates and who would just tell me off as as mates. Some of them they will come and insult you and go away, but you are their manager. But in Skyy, it was slightly different. One, the team was much younger, and Ghana, we have respect for older people. So there was that respect. One thing that I said, and I think I've already made mention of it, was the fact that there was that kind of respect. And then two, there was that kind of a family feel. What makes me miss Skyy, and which I still talk about, is the way we got along with each other. Very occasionally would you find one staff have a rift with another staff which could not be resolved. I mean, at any point in time, we're all brothers and we're all sisters. And that, to me, was very, very striking. The work, the very, down to earth, flat structure and that kind of thing where we could just easily move into roles, move into functions, and people are not offended easily. I believe that time, very young guys, and we were just a bunch of very close-knit guys who understood each other and who were ready to actually help each other better their programs and all that. So, yes, that is one thing that is very striking. The friendliness, the friendship we had as a team. That to me was quite recognizable. And I have to talk about that.
Now, talking about Skyy Christian Radio briefly, did you meet a gentleman called Michael Griffiths, who was there from the beginning?
No, I didn't.
You didn't meet Michael Griffiths?
No, I didn't. Okay. I came to meet his jingles, but I never met him.
Right. He's also one of the colleagues I've already spoken to. He's a gentleman, just like you, and interestingly, his recollection was that he was a very committed guy in terms of his faith. And so he didn't want to run any of the other radio programs at all. Nothing. He wasn't interested in the secular part of it at all. So basically, from what he recollects, he designed what he called Skyy Christian Radio and presented it to Wilson for Wilson's approval. So then he started running Skyy Christian Radio from day one.
Yes, I remember. I think he got on Action, and then afterwards, so I came to meet Action, leading the team then. But Action then used to work. Action then used to work with Vodafone. No, not Vodafone. Action used to work with an internet service provider at that time.
I think, from memory, I think it was called Africa Online.
Africa Online, yes, Africa Online at that time. So Action, just did the radio on part time, but I was on full time. So that sort of forced me to take over the leadership of the Christian radio, basically. But anytime we're doing anything, it was me and Action together.
Yes, and Achin Akins was probably one of our first in-house IT guys, if you could refer to those the activities of those days as IT, because he was connecting a few businesses with what was then internet. I mean, not that we'll call it internet these days, because what do you do with a dial-up internet these days? But he was connecting that and connected Skyy, as I remember. And I already had the experience of using internet when I had already been in Australia the previous year I was in Australia. And so I understood what, internet was, and it was connected. I was so passionate about Skyy getting connected. But looking back, when you connect that thing and it is ringing through, it's like a very painful surgery you're carrying when you try to connect, But Achin Akin was very committed in trying to make it work. And I believe those were the days when email was email it was just text, nothing but text.
Just email, just text, no attachment.
And even then you have to wait for half an hour to be able to fetch one new message.
That was unfair.
It was an era.
I believe everything changed a lot when we hit the year 2000s, and that's where things started really happening.
Well, yes, and then when we heard of the so-called Y2K, it was the in our minds, it was worse than coronavirus back then. But boy, wouldn't we rather have Y2K right now? Wouldn't we rather have Y2K?
Anyway.
Yeah. So, look, interestingly, I should say, when I have spoken to our colleagues, had this similar conversation, it was always a lot of emphasis on the family environment that existed there. And so far, Rutai described it in the most touching terms. In fact, when he described it, the family environment, I felt a bit of goose pimple. He said everyone who worked at Skyy at that time was like that. He said we were all siblings, and I thought, I it's very hard to put it in a better way. It's very hard to put it in a better way. Yeah.
Well, we're siblings there. We're siblings there. I personally got involved in one or two people's relationships, that were having difficulties in and stuff like that. I personally got involved in people's personal affairs and stuff like that. So, yes, I remember traveling to the UK. May her soul rest in peace. Jan gave me money to buy my ticket at that time. And then when I went, then I paid her. So that was what we were. That was what we were. I remember Issy said, "Look, Yaw, stop living with your uncle. Come, let's live at our flat." That's how Issy put us together. Me and Papa P. And then Issy did everything and brought us together at that flat that Skyy had rented.
Do you mean at Chapel Hill?
Chapel Hill, yes.
Yes.
And that even strengthened our bond. Later, Atu Kamana came and he joined us there. Okay. So, for me, yes, siblings, that is what it was. And we all ate one meal. Issy would cook. And then, Issy would cook, and then at least we have stew there. If I brought food from outside, I would leave some for Pakofi. If Pakofi brought food, he would leave some for us, and that kind of thing. And so, we all found our way. It was simply a family.
When I spoke to Shirley Irama Smith, she was saying, again, a similar point, and we were both recalling that, when you brought food from town to eat for lunch or whatever, you can be sure everyone knows it was like an unwritten rule. You buy food, it's not for you alone. You bring it there. Anybody from anywhere, someone will just wash their hand or just passing by and just, sometimes I've seen people putting their food in their mouth, without looking at who else is eating, and then they walk to wherever they're going.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
It was, look, I it just feels great to be able to describe it as family. I think it's just, and Irama Smith recalls that because she's had a chance to work in other places. She said it's very hard to just find that kind of environment anywhere else, and I struggle personally to fully define it in a way, because mind you, when we were there, we were in the moment. We didn't see how special it was, how unique it was. We just lived it. We just enjoyed it. Then
lived it. And when we left, we realized that, there was something really good behind that. We just lived it. I believe it has to also do with the man who was leading us. Willie himself being a very, the trio, Willie Adwa, the trio being that very, so that kind of attribute. Every organization's culture just doesn't emerge. It comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
It comes out of something. And
it's a culture that came from something.
The trio management of Willie Adwa, and how they related and how down there they were. They lived next to the studio, and how they and that trickled down to create that kind of culture we had. Okay, so yes, it was like that. Me and Mamukwa, we used to talk a lot. I used to have a lot of one-on-one with us, that was it.
Yeah, I think with everyone, it was always the case that our impression was that it wasn't hierarchical very much. It was a very flat system. In fact,
no, not very much. Not very. You just walk into Willie's office.
Yeah, you just walk to his office, and I remember, and that's like, obviously, as I'm talking to our colleagues and thinking about this, how the structure of the book is eventually going to be, and looking at the way to paint the real stories we lived. I started remembering a lot of things I forgot, but one of the funny little things I remembered is that Wilson's office is where the transmitter was. The transmitter sat directly behind him in his office
before it moved down.
Yeah, and it was always making this humming noise, continuously humming, and a lot of multicolored lights blinking, and he was there. That guy should have been fried.
I'm telling you,
but nothing happened to him, but I remember those days we were told, no, just like today you might hear something about, how awful 5G technology might be. And, we're not saying it is this way or the other. But, I used to kind of worry about it. Not that I ever mentioned it, but Wilson happily sat in that office, and a lot of conversations occurred in that office because it was open to everyone. Did you meet a guy called Kimby?
I met Kimby. And for about 3 months down the line, he left.
Before he left. Okay. So let me share a story Mami C. McHanson shared with me. And it just illustrates what became the culture, at the workplace in terms of the leadership. So Mami C. heard Skyy test transmission and decided she would like to work there. Came there, well-dressed, beautifully dressed, as Mami AC would. That only Mami AC would, And so she got there to 37 Windy Ridge, and she saw only two gentlemen, Well, one not very much a gentleman, because anyway, one of the two men she saw, beautifully dressed, like attractive, and straight away you knew, look, this is a serious place. The other person is a direct opposite, just looking wretched and lying down on a carpet on the floor, right? So Mamiesi says, well, her attitude was, well, if you don't dress that properly and you are lying on a carpet, you might as well be given a treatment that, looks like it. So she focused her attention on the properly dressed gentleman and said, look, this is, my purpose. This is my letter application, blah, blah, blah. Well, and then she says to me, do you know who the nicely dressed gentleman was? I said, no. She said, well, it's Kimby. And I said, of course. Kimby is always beautifully dressed. Like, I'm sure even when he's going to bed, he dresses beautifully. The other gentleman who looked wretched, not dressed properly, is lying on the carpet, is Wilson Arthur, the chief executive, the owner of the station. So when this is your introduction to the place of work, then you realize, well, it is not so formal. And it wasn't. It never was, It
really was.
And Atu, Kwamna Dazi, and I eventually formed this opinion that we actually didn't have a real management in place. That because Wilson will come and say, well, from now on, management wants this, or this is management's decision, right? Because mostly we were incorrigible. We didn't agree to anything. We just wanted to do the things our way.
You and us were crazy guys.
Because most of the time, whatever Wilson wants the news to be is not what we think it should be. And we were the news editors, So anyway, so Wilson felt like he should stamp a bit of an authority, whether it was his or some imaginary, influence. So he would say
imaginary management.
Yeah, imaginary management. So he will say management says, and so when he goes away, or rather when he says that, we look at each other and think, really, do we have a management there? And who is the management, right? So later on, we agreed that management simply means Wilson. He's the management. Yeah, so we started calling him management.
Management. Oh wow.
But then that is just how amazing and light and fun and informal it was. And things just worked so beautifully, among us all.
Perfectly.
And what you heard on air, the output was, as everyone knows and says, just A+.
Very, very. I mean, it was very intriguing. Later, when I left Skyy, I missed Skyy so much. But then a lot of you guys left.
Eventually,
and it was more about human beings than just about the place. Even though Sonata and guys were there, the management team was still there. For me personally, when I came back, I couldn't find a lot of us. We had all moved on.
Yeah.
So that's it. But I still have the great ones, Jonas Sin and JM Caesar.
Yeah.
But G stuck there for quite a while as well before he also moved.
Yeah. So
but
as I was,
there are stuff that I've learned about Skyy, and anytime I introduce Wilson Arthur anywhere, I remember Wilson Arthur was the guy who introduced me to what we call SWOT analysis.
SWOT analysis.
In one of those, because he has
your strengths, your weaknesses,
first.
The opportunities, and the threats.
He gave me that model, and he explained to me and said, "Yeah, you can use this model to do a lot of stuff." So I was actually using it. Some of you didn't know. I was actually using it I wouldn't say appraise, but to analyze some of you in terms of your strengths and your weaknesses, and I will discuss with him, And so Skyy is the place I first learned about management. Even though I used to do something on campus, Skyy is the first place I started actually doing corporate management. And then really took me to one or two courses, corporate management and corporate finance. He did that. And then, so, a place for me to launch off my management, and it was always another who actually. So was a great place to learn. Mm-hmm. Then about the different people, how the different temperaments. We're all siblings, but just like we all know, we are all different. So you have the likes of Ruth I, who would want to run into the studio 5 minutes to time and come and present, and won't come in 30 minutes to come and prepare. And so sometimes you can have a bit of a running. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can have a guys who won't go according to you guys who won't go according to what you said.
Because Ruth I would be one of those guys who perform best under pressure.
Yes. So it was.
Yeah.
So that is what.
Yeah. And
that is what it is.
When I was preparing for this conversation, I kept thinking, I try not to think of specific questions because otherwise it just won't sound as good. And surprisingly, it won't necessarily bring out the best in both of us because what we're talking about isn't something that's strange to us. We're just trying to remind ourselves of what we experienced together.